Salute to you all, the brave never fall. Self-love through freedom and connection. So feel free to connect to the Brave Never Fall on these social media platforms. If you find anything of value in this following podcast, hit that like button, subscribe and share, and support the brave and bold tribe growing one purposeful soul at a time. There are no coincidences in life. The strength you have is real. Each breath you take is a blessing. Don't give up, give more. Believe in yourself and trust yourself. How are you feeling? Take a moment to do a self-check-in for yourself. How are you feeling mentally? How are you feeling emotionally? How are you feeling physically? How are you feeling spiritually? Are you feeling balanced? Are you still journeying on an intentional, purposeful path? How are you feeling? Balancing yourself is a healthy daily practice that will reliably keep you in harmony with your entire mind, body, heart, and soul. Clear your mind. Take a moment of silence for yourself right now in the moment. You are here now. How are you feeling? The tears of pain I shed today will be the tears of joy I shed tomorrow. We always feel as if there's moments where it's not going to be easy to go on to the next moment, no matter what it is. We have to remind ourselves that no matter what happens, you will always be left with you. That life, no matter what it is going on around you or in the people's lives that you care for, it still ends up being you. And it still ends up being an exercise every single day of how truly tested you really are. We all believe we've been tested, that we've been through it all, that we have just so much more to learn. Yeah, we feel like we know everything. There's always going to be something that's going to remind you you don't know nearly as much as you believe you know. And that is so true about who we are. We believe we know every emotion we've ever felt. We've already felt it, and that's not true. As we grow, as we become wiser to what's going on around us, that doesn't make us more intelligent. We may be wise about things that happen around us, but that doesn't mean we're going to always take that information and do the right things with them. We're not going to take the pain that we have and put it in the right context. We're not going to take the successes we have and be humble about it. Every tear you shed has a meaning. And every breath you take has the exact same thing. It's up to each and every one of us to figure out what's inside of us and how we're going to continue to grow what's inside of us so it doesn't crumble when things start to go bad. When things start to go wrong, we want to make sure we are strong enough to get through them. We are not here on this earth to prove how strong we are to other people. We are here to prove to ourselves we are strong enough to endure our own lives. And it's not up for everyone else to make that story for us. It's not up to everyone else to recreate the tale of us. It's up to us to create the tale we want everyone to see of who we really are. And if we don't press the narrative within ourselves, no one will care about the story, and you'll be forgotten. War, conflict, turmoil, chaos, pain, heartbreak. These are words that can easily be our truths and define us as a person who is engaged in an indefinite battle with ourselves. We are seen as one way on the outside, yet inside we are hiding in silence and secrecy, feelings and emotions that are battle-tested and hardened. In the famous myth from the Trojan War between the Greeks and the Trojans, the Greeks constructed a massive wooden horse, which was large enough to fit a sizable battalion of Greek soldiers. Offered as a gift to the Trojans as the Greeks pretended to have fled the shores of Troy for good after their 10-year siege of Troy, the Trojans mistakenly accepted the gift and wheeled the Trojan horse inside the walls of Troy. That night, the hiding Greek soldiers exited the horse and opened the gates of Troy to the rest of the Greek army, which was hiding in a bay not far from Troy. The Greeks ended the war that night by conquering Troy. We can look at the tale of the great Trojan horse as a trick, an unfair, unhonorable ploy to defeat an enemy that had already claimed victory. Or we can look at it in another way, adaptation. The Greeks had a goal, and for 10 years, they never relented on that goal. Even after they were defeated, they saw no end, no finish line until the goal was completed. They didn't believe in luck or coincidences. They believed in never running away. A step back is smart when needed, but to turn and run when it seemed all but over was never an option. The Greeks believed they were better, and they found an adaptable, ingenious, creative way to solve their most difficult puzzle. We too, as people, as individuals, who face challenges each day, whether we want to or not, are miniature examples of that Trojan horse. We can use our quote-unquote soldiers we're hiding inside to adapt, evolve, overcome, endure what we face. Or we can allow those soldiers to sit forever, doing nothing, getting old, negative, and loathing the very thing it's stuck inside of. Or we can do unbelievably amazing things and become the success stories of our own. Valor under Moonbows, Episode 1, Soul of a Trojan Horse. This particular color wave for this podcast series is going to be one of the more unique ones, I think, just in the inherent nature of what I'm trying to get across, that there is a part of ourselves that I think perhaps, I don't know any of this stuff. This is where I think, and we'll get into what Valor under Moonbows is in episode 12. I always cover the title of the color wave in the last episode of each series. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about what Valor under Moonbows is. If you want to do some preemptive work as far as finding out what a moonbow is and finding out what valor really means and putting it together, it's really quite simple. It just means you being brave under a sky that basically has whatever meaning you want to it. So unless we can travel to the stars and see all these things, people don't realize that at night there are rainbows. And it's just one of those things, it's right in our face. But if you tell the right person that, they may think you're crazy. So we'll cover more of that in episode 12. But for this one, we're talking about the initial concept that came to my mind about who we really are and the stretch and the pull between our souls and what goes on around us and how it affects us. Because you think, well, coach, how does this deal with my life as far as on a personal level? What does all this mean to me on a personal level? It means a whole lot. It means a whole lot. Because it always, no matter what you think, no matter what you see, no matter what you believe, all of that always comes back to you. And when that is the case, when everything always comes back to you, when everything that is in your life that has answers and meaning and purpose, the one thing you can't escape from is you. There is no escape from it. As long as you're breathing, as long as you're able to function, even if you're subconsciously not able to do it, if you're in a coma, you are still dealing with something, whether you're aware of it or not. Your body is alive, whether you're alive, really like mentally alive and awake or not. When you're sleeping, your body is still doing what it has to do to keep you alive. We're not awake making our body do certain things, but our body is still functioning without the use of our consciousness. So it means a whole lot when you start thinking about how powerful the soul is, because we A, don't quite understand it, and B, even if we did understand it, what would we do with that knowledge? Would our lives change if someone came to you and said, we have all the answers you will ever need about your soul? How would you take that information? Would it change your life? Would they tell you this is what your soul is? This is where it came from. This is what happens to it after your body ceases to be able to work without your consciousness. It might change you. But odds are no one's ever going to walk up to you and tell you that. So we have to deal with what we have to deal with. And what we have to deal with is the fact that we have a soul. We know we are alive. We know that we're awake. And how it affects you on a personal level when it comes to coaching and when it comes to getting advice. If someone says, you're a life coach, why are you talking about these types of things? Is because I think it's important to understand everything about yourself, including the parts of you that you do not understand. Because if we're going to accept the fact there are things externally out in this world that we do not understand, we have to also understand that on the other side of that, there is so much about ourselves internally that we do not understand. We seem to focus so much on the external about what we don't understand that we ignore all of the same, pretty much the same things that we focus on externally about what we don't understand. Internally, we ignore it. We act like it doesn't matter. Would we understand the external more if we started understanding the internal more? And the vision of that Trojan horse popped in my mind when I was thinking about this. And this is why meditation is so great. It's because it allows your mind to go to places where you would normally go to if you were just doing your normal run-of-the-mill daily routine. Disciplined or not, sometimes being disciplined leaves little room for you to think outside the box. And I'm a big believer that you should be thinking out the box as much as possible. My meditation sessions are some of my favorite hours of the day because I can really get into my own head and also not only meditate on myself, but meditate on what's going on around me. And you come up with things like this and you start seeing images and you start getting, things start to come together and you start thinking about, I was thinking about the Trojan horse. I'm a big history buff. I'm a big mythology nut job, big science fiction fan. And I think some of those mythologies incorporates all of that. Some of the best storytelling we've ever had came from mythology and the Bible of all things. I mean, you can ask anyone on the planet about a Bible story and they know it regardless of what their religious affiliation is. So it's important, I think, to understand why they came up with these stories in the first place, and how if someone can come up with these mythologies and these stories that you can either believe them or not believe them, they happened or they didn't happen. That's up to each individual. But what we can say is that they came from a human mind, a human heart and soul, body. A human thought of these grand tales, these big mythologies. And when you look at the battle between Troy and Greece, one of the greatest wars of all time, one of the longest wars we've ever had. And there's been much longer wars, but when you think about a city on a beach front, essentially, now they're away from the beach. It's not like there's a giant freaking city sitting right on the beach, but it's a beach. It's easily accessible. And Troy was able to make their walls big enough and fortify them with the right training with their soldiers to not fall to constant pressure and sieges from all these different freaking nations and cultures that just wanted to get inside of those walls and find out what it would feel like and what the world would react to them as a nation, a country, a civilization that conquered the mighty Troy. So they just became a giant prize. And it took Greece assimilating all these other civilizations and all these other cultures and nations and countries, making kings of kings bow down to them. You have King Agamemnon, who finally says, I want to conquer Troy. Let's do this. And then they go and they try to do it. And they fail again and again and again. They get a little small victory. They take some steps forward, but then Troy does something to knock them far back. And it's just this ebb and flow. And we'll talk about Achilles and Hector in actually another episode in this series. So I won't spend time talking about the individual battles. We're talking about the grand battles on this one. But the impressive thing about it is that Troy fought and fought and fought, believing and knowing in their ranks that if we just keep on adding on and being innovative and figuring out the right times to strike, we'll take Troy down eventually. Eventually, they're going to make a mistake. And we're going to have to force that mistake. We're going to have to be creative. And they came up with the Trojan Horse. Hide a battalion of men inside. Tricked someone. And we'll talk about that in a second, about is trickery something that it should be allowed in the human soul to gain a victory. But we'll talk about perspective in a moment. But the point is that they did what they had to do, and they got inside and did the unthinkable through a means of something that is created, a structure, some symbolism on top of that, something that the world would never forget. It's one of the most insane scenarios you can ever think of building a horse, hiding men inside of it, going inside of a city. Night falls, men come out, take out the guards at the gates, open up the gates, fleets hiding in the harbor bay that the Trojans just completely did not believe you could hide a fleet the size of Greece's fleet on this side. They just thought they were gone. The arrogance of Troy. We scared them away. The gods have scared them away. We're safe. And they paid the price for it because Greece took Troy that night. So how does this relate back to us? I think that is the question, isn't it? We tend to do whatever it takes to survive. Whether it's by accident, because a lot of times when you think about things, just because something happens in a way where someone, you believe someone is trying to fool you or trying to trick you or trying to do things that may be manipulative to that person, you have to see both sides of the story. You don't know if everything is happening with someone is happening because they're malicious or they're doing it to hurt someone. There are a lot of different reasons why people make a whole bunch of different decisions. And this is why understanding our own personal human souls is so important. Because unfortunately in life, if the Trojans came inside of that place with that horse and then they revealed themselves instantly, hey, listen, this is what we're about to do to you guys. We're going to tell you the plan. The odds of them taking Troy that night were probably not going to happen. But you also got to look at the other side of it. The arrogance of Troy is what allowed the horse into the walls of Troy in the first place. Now you think about that. Troy essentially conquered itself through arrogance and through not understanding and believing that they were more powerful than they actually were. Even though they were the most powerful civilization at that time, one of the most, very highly respected, obviously. I mean, they were getting sieged left and right, and they never fell. Their king was old. I mean, they had a whole... I mean, their whole civilization inside there was just unique. No one knew what was going on in there unless you were Trojan. They would come out and they would make their treaties and their peace with other nations to ensure that they didn't get taken down. But we'll talk about, the way things unravel. A little small event here and there changes the tide of any story. It doesn't have to be grand. When we're thinking about stuff in perspective, when we're thinking about decision-making in perspective, we have to think about where other people are coming from. Empathy is an extremely hard thing. We could sympathize very easily. People sympathize without even thinking about it. It's easy to sympathize. It's easy to walk past somebody and say, I feel sorry for you. That's sympathy. Empathy is deeper than that. It's like, I feel what you're feeling. How can I help you? The odd thing about empathy and understanding who you are, or even maybe if it's different than that, if you're on the wrong side of empathy and maybe you're loving a little bit too much, the lack of understanding of who you really are can get you in trouble. That's what happened to Troy. Troy knew what they were. They truly believed and knew what they were, to the point where they were blinded by an act of creativity and an ingenious way of believing in yourself enough where you're willing to do practically anything to make sure you accomplish your goal. So let's look at the other side. Is that a particularly good trait? When you look at a person or a group of people who are willing to do anything to the point of creating something that's beautiful out of, who knows if it's hatred, maybe it's egotism, maybe it's pride and honor. The Greeks felt, I'm sure, all of that, but they created something very beautiful. I mean, the Trojans wanted it. They brought the damn horse into their kingdom and was celebrating around it. To them, it was a gift from the gods. They didn't even think that the Greeks made it. They thought it was a gift offered from the gods because they were so mighty of a civilization. I'm talking about hubris right there, ego. But if you look at the former history, the Trojans are looked upon as the ones who were the victims because they were conquered. And the Greeks are looked at like they're the ones who are bad because they're the ones who are invading. Which one is it? See, this is why a proper perspective and a good conversation can always bring out the best of a human being, because you get to find out a lot about people. If you talk to people about things like this, if you ask someone a question, like, who was wrong there? It's fun to see what people's answers are, or interesting to see what their answers are, because they're so unique. You can really tell how someone would sway back and forth to that side, because there were heroes and villains on both sides of that war. They're colliding for kings. The people underneath them, who's to say that the Greek army were horrible people because they were following a king who was hell-bent on conquering a civilization for his own pride and ego? Who's to say that the Trojans in their hiding and hoarding all that they have and not giving to the world, that could be looked upon as selfish? They were in talks with peace with other civilizations. The Greeks, they did meet an agreement. It was what happened. We'll talk about it later with the Hector and Achilles. We'll talk about Helen of Troy and how that all got completely bent out of shape in the mythology and started this war. It's really, the war was started over a woman. Troy and Greece had come to a peace agreement. So when you think about that, it's so much that goes into it, to any situation. And we're no different. There are plenty of times where we've gone into a situation where we feel like the other person did something so horrible, and we're angry, we're mad, we're resentful, we don't want to forgive them. But when you break it down, it's always a good idea to look at what you're doing, what part you're playing in the story. And that's what A Soul of a Trojan Horse is all about, is understanding that you have things that are going on inside of you. Just like that Trojan horse, who knows? They could have came out of that horse and had balloons and cake and money and say, hey, let's have a party. But they chose to come out of their horse and kill Trojans and open up the gates and conquer the city. So we are no different. We are every one of us are the Trojan horses. And every person you meet is Troy. And it's up to us to figure out, when we open our mouths and the actions that we take, how they're going to be perceived from others. And what's our agenda? What's our purpose? What are we believing in? What are we creating? Every single day. Are we conscious of that? Are we going to say that even though we're going to do this thing, we're going to go to this place, we're going to interact with this person, we know deep in our hearts what our agenda is. The other person doesn't. It is our choice to make sure that this person either sees what we're really feeling like inside, or vice versa. The person in front of you, the place that you're at, none of that matters if you're not the one being genuine about what you're doing. If it's an accident, if you do something to someone and it's an accident, you had no intention of hurting that person, you can tell them it's their choice and their right to believe you. It is not your choice and your right to try to convince someone over and over and over again of what your intentions are. Eventually, that other person is going to either get it or not. You're never going to convince someone, because they're living their own truths and their own lives and their own stories, and they see things a lot differently. They may see your actions as completely different, regardless of what you say your intentions are. And it goes back and forth. It goes both ways. The healthy compromise is understanding the truth in it. Where does the foundation lie? We don't have to worry about when someone's saying, if we know what they're built upon. It's easy to say this person made a mistake because of their character, versus they did it maliciously because that's not their character. But even in that case, it's the first time for everything, right? Someone could be the nicest person on the planet and something could happen to trigger them or to upset them, and they may have a moment of being uncharacteristic of themselves. Or someone could sit and plan this in silence and secrecy for a long time and present it to you as if it's the first time that this happened. But in their truth, it's been happening all along. And you know how we know that? Because if you listen to this, you do it too. You do it every single day. We all do it. We don't tell everybody every single feeling and emotion we're having every single day. We don't tell everybody every single plan or goal that we're trying to achieve every single day, every single time you meet someone. So we're always, in a way, living in secrecy and silence. Is that good or bad? We're planning all the time. Is it good or bad to be silent about something that's important to you that you're planning? Or to be silent about something that someone's accusing you of and you're saying, I know I could try to convince you otherwise, but you're not going to believe me, so why should I even waste my time? Because you know that character. You know they're never going to believe you. It doesn't matter. You made a mistake and it's malicious and you're an asshole. That's what these people are thinking. If they're coming at you that way, it's very hard to convince someone that you haven't done something wrong. That's why we have court systems. That's why we have to go to trials and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on lawyers just for a truth to be revealed It's happening every day on a minor level. And I've learned that trying to convince people who you are when you know who you are is a wasted effort. The people who really know you, you don't have to do all that convincing. They know. If you make a mistake and they know what your character is, and they view it as you're some malicious, mean monster, when you know that you're not, why would you spend any effort trying to convince that person that you're different than what they perceive you to be? They either know you or they don't. It's not your responsibility or your business to try to make people see you a certain way. You carry yourself the way you carry yourself. The Trojans wanted Troy to see that horse as a peace offering, but there was something else going on inside, and that flips both ways. That's what's happening all around us. There's Trojan horses all around us. There are people who are saying one thing and doing another. There are people who are doing one thing and saying something else. It's happening all around us and we can't control it. You will stress yourself out. You will find yourself in a place of unrest. You will find yourself in a place of anxiety and depression, trying to make other people believe in your soul. Whatever you have inside of your Trojan horse, whatever is in your heart in secrecy and silence, if it's in a good place, that's your right to have that. If it's in a bad place, it's your right to have that. No one can tell you what to do. The question is, are you content what was ever inside of that Trojan horse? Of you? Are you content what is inside of you? Are you at peace and genuine with what you do? Even though other people may perceive it to be wrong, and you know what you're trying to do, is it okay for you to sit there and say, I know who I am. I'm going to continue being who I am because I know for myself it's built on a foundation of A, B, and C. And no matter what you say to me, no matter what happens, I will never, ever stray towards this side, the side that you believe that I am. But at the same time, it's not my job to convince you that I'm going either direction. You can look at me and observe and make your own conclusions, because I'm not trying to do that to you. And I think that's the biggest thing. That's one of those things, I think, when it comes to who you are inside and what you're really made of, which is your soul, which we're still, again, trying to define. We're trying to figure out who we really are. What does our soul and our purpose really mean? It's a big, heavy task. And everybody has the burden of carrying that weight of, who am I? What are my intentions? And how badly do I want certain things in life that I feel that are important to me, regardless of what other people on the outside think? What do I want? And more importantly, why do I want it? What am I willing to do to get it? Am I willing to hurt people to get it? Do people believe that I would hurt them to get it? Unfortunately, it really doesn't matter what other people think. People are going to think what they're going to think. Instead of trying to spend so much time focusing on convincing other people of your character, I would spend more time focusing on who you are in your character, period. Because once you figure that out, and I've learned this, once you figure out who you are and the foundation is set, other people coming at you, criticizing you, doubting you, judging you, it really doesn't matter anymore, because you know who you are. And unless that person who's accusing you has never made a mistake in their life, and they're perfect, and they've never done anything wrong, which would be very hard to prove in any sense. I don't care if you live 5 years or 150, it's very hard to prove you've never done anything wrong, because chances are you are, and you're doing it often. But these are the people that, if you are, unfortunately, you have them in your life where they tell you you're doing everything wrong and they really have no faults. How could you ever convince someone of your good intentions, of your goals and your successes, and how you've learned from your failures? I don't really think they're going to care much. So there's really no effort that needs to be put into convincing other people who you are. You create, just like the Greeks. They created the horse. It didn't matter to them what history remembered them as conquerors or as creators of something that helped them take down a civilization. They just did something, and they let history figure itself out. Same with the Trojans. They didn't think hiding in these walls and coming out only when we have to and making peace treaties and we're sitting safe back here and we'll fight off the sieges and we've done this for so long, we're the greatest. They didn't think about what the rest of the world thought about them. They didn't care. They did what was best for Troy. Both sides were right. Both sides were wrong. Because no one is completely right and no one is completely wrong. We're all just doing what we have to do in our own truths. We're all doing what we have to do each day in the own creations that we make each day that benefit us first. Because it has to be benefit. We can't create all the time just for everyone else. What are you leaving for yourself? Other people are creating. Again, creating without even knowing that they're doing it. You can create a bad day real quick if you're not careful. You can create a good day just as easily if you're not careful. If you want to say careful, who doesn't want to have a good day? So what does that mean? It means exactly what it seems like it means. It means you're in control of your day. It means the only way that someone could actually jolt you out of having a day for you is you being in conflict with yourself. And those days are going to come regardless of how happy you are, how much success you have, how many right decisions you've made, how good your foundation are, how much self-love you have, how much purpose you've found, how much fulfillment you're swimming in. You're still going to have days where you feel like every decision you've made is wrong. Every day coming forward is going to be dark. Every person you love despises you. All the people around you, despite all the people around you, you feel completely alone. These are all things that you're going to feel regardless in life, and you need to feel them. The Greek army needed to feel defeat over and over and over again for a decade before they came up with a single idea of creating a fucking horse, getting inside of it, and having them trick this civilization because they knew that their ego, Troy's ego, after all those victories, had to be so high that something as simple as building a wooden horse out of boat parts, hiding some men inside just so they can go in and open the gates from the inside, came from a 10-year defeat over and over and over again. And I guess if you're the Greek army, who got the last laugh? It only took one victory to overcome all of those 10 years of defeats. One solid, creative idea. We are no different. You're going to go through a lot. It's going to seem like it lasts forever. But nothing is impossible if you are really wanting to focus on it and get it. When you give up, that's when all the creating and the opportunities for you to show the world who you are, to show the people in your lives that are important to you who you are, goes away when you start giving up. When you let those days of depression and anxiety overcome you. They're going to be there, but there are ways to overcome them. And that is our job each day. That is what I believe our soul is here for, is to do something creative, to create something in our lives that will gain us access to what we want, need, and desire in our lives. Because it's right there. We just have to figure out how to get it. What are we willing to do? How do we do it? We all have to answer that question for ourselves. We are pledging today, we will remain centered in who we are. We pledge, we know that every single decision we make, every interaction, everything that goes right, everything that goes wrong, our pledge is to stay centered. Bring it back home. We won't forget why that's important. We won't ignore why that's important. We won't make excuses why that's important. We're pledging today, I am staying centered. I am going to remember why I am who I am today, even if I don't like it, even if it's flawed, even if it's not perfect. We're bringing it back home. We have to know what home is. When we know what home is, we know that every part of us has a place where we can return to, a place where we can find out what is wrong. We can't be scattered. We have to be centered. We can find the pieces better when they're all in one spot. When they're scattered, much more difficult. We're pledging to be us. You are pledging to be you. We will find out the answers of who we are when we figure out where our home is, our soul, what's in there. Always return to that. That is our safe zone. That is your protection. Who you are inside. We must return to that when we're feeling unbalanced and lost. Through enduring hardships, the tears of pain I shed today will be the tears of joy I shed tomorrow. This is your day. You are here now. These are your moments. You own them. You are brave, bold, powerful. You do believe in yourself. You know you have more in the tank. You know the glass is half full. There's still more room for improvement. There is no end. Believe, believe, believe in yourself. Trust yourself. Trust that you can do whatever it takes to accomplish whatever you want from life. You don't procrastinate. You don't embellish. You don't lie. You are true to yourself always. Knowledge is in your mind. Peace is in your heart. Balance is in your body. Purpose is in your soul. You are greatness. The sky is not the limit. You have purpose, fulfilling, intentful purpose. You are here for a reason. You are unique. You are self-love, self-discipline, self-respect, self-control. You have self-awareness. You are joy, peace, and happiness. You are freedom, and yet connected to every person, place, and thing in the universe. And if no one has told you this today, I love you. You deserve to hear that. Salute to you all. The brave never fall.